Hello, and welcome to Tennis Stories. I'm your host, Anisha Boston Hill, head of NJTL Strategic Partnerships and Events at USTA Eastern. So, everyone has a tennis story. And on this podcast, we're interviewing some interesting folks to hear what it is about this sport that takes us from enjoying it as a hobby to an all out obsession. My guest today is Lisa Pugliese-LaCroix, who is the founder of Love Serving Autism, an organization that delivers tennis to people with autism. Lisa, thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here today.
We're so happy to share your story. And so let's start with your personal journey. When was the first time you picked up a racket?
I was raised in Memphis, Tennessee, and started tennis when I was about 5 years old. Taught actually the tennis pro who taught me was at the Racket Club of Memphis. And so I was exposed to the sport at a very young age.
Oh, that's fantastic. How old were you, Lisa?
I was about, I'd say 5 or 6 years old. And my mom introduced me to the sport because she had signed up for a private lesson and wasn't available that day and said, well, my daughter's available. And so that was my introduction.
Oh, wow. And that seems to be kind of the age, right? That's how most people really, fall in love with tennis.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
so, what inspired you to go from, playing to getting involved with adaptive tennis?
Well, tennis obviously was a big part of my life growing up, and played in Florida junior tennis and in college and a little on the tour, and took a break. I had a little bit of a back injury, and I decided to teach a little bit of tennis part time. And I ended up applying to graduate school. And I quickly learned how much I like to help others. And I love the field of speech language pathology. So I became a speech therapist. And this was about 19 years ago. And interestingly, I stepped out of the tennis world for quite a while and became an SLP and worked in the classrooms, and really was reconnected to tennis through volunteering with another nonprofit organization and learning about teaching children with autism tennis. And I thought, wow, I would love to get back into tennis for this purpose. So it really wasn't anything on my radar when I was younger of teaching adaptive tennis, but I definitely think it fits my personality, and I was drawn to it because it's all about helping others through the sport.
That's fantastic. When it comes to adaptive, the world of being adaptive, I always say that being an educator is one thing. Working with people with special needs or in the adaptive world, it just really increases your heart. And when I think of love serving tennis, that's exactly what I think about. Someone with a big heart giving back to this community. And so, when did you realize or have your aha moment that you wanted to start this company, Love Serving Autism?
In 2016, I definitely had my aha moment of connecting the speech therapy or the clinical world with tennis and adaptive tennis, actually. So I'd have to say I did not know anything about starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I definitely knew that I had a passion to do it, and I was super interested in doing it. Thankfully, there were directors of other organizations and friends who guided me along the way. And so I did apply on my own for the name Love Serving Autism in July 2016. And from that point, I formed a board of directors who were friends or parents of children I taught speech therapy to. So it was really just one step at a time. So I think that definitely it was a big moment in my life. And I called my parents and I said, starting a nonprofit. And my dad's a businessman. And, when he said, wow, well, you are a speech therapist. I said, I know that, but I do have a passion for adaptive tennis as well. So that's really where the journey began. I mean, my parents always believed in me, but I don't think until now they realize the enormity of it and how many children and adults can be served through the sport, and that it is a business opportunity as well.
That's great. And speaking of business, what services do you provide?
through Love Serving Autism?
Yes.
Okay, so currently, due to grant funding here in Palm Beach County, Florida, so I do live in Boynton Beach, we are working with therapists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and behavioral therapists on court. So they're integrating therapies and working with the children and adults, focusing on communication skills, motor coordination skills, life skills, and behavior. With the goal in mind of what they're learning on the tennis court can transition off court into their daily life. So I say we're now in year 6 of the organization, and we are now beginning to work with therapists, multidisciplinary approach where therapists are coming on court for the first time. Started that in 2022, and our mission is to expand that model throughout our locations through Florida and out of state, even into your section, UST Eastern, partnering with local universities in the area, identifying graduate students or students who are in the field of special needs who can help us on court with our programming.
That's fantastic. And so your motto is serving autism on and off the tennis court.
Yeah.
How did you, come up with that concept?
Because I'm a speech therapist, I thought, it's important, obviously, what we teach on court, but it's also important. I think parents' biggest concern is once their children grow up and become adults, what's next, right? And so how will they become functionally independent, and will they be able to take care of themselves and live independently? So we are teaching tennis and pickleball, by the way. We're starting to grow into that as well, but with the bigger purpose in mind of this is a therapy. So the tennis court is a therapy session, and we're working on all of these skills to better the lives of these individuals so that they can live independent lives. And I think that's what parents are really happy about, is that, they are learning how to hit a forehand volley, but at the same time, they're learning to initiate communication with their coach and request and ask for help if they need it or advocate for themselves. And that's something that it's a bit non-traditional, this form of therapy, but it's something I think is really important. And parents are really looking for these types of opportunities for their children and adults now to improve upon these skills.
Fantastic. And starting a business really just encompasses your whole life. It just kind of takes over your entire life. You go from this idea that you have to filing the paperwork, and now you need to push forward. And so what has the impact been on your personal life since you started doing this work?
Well, that's a great question, and you can probably ask my husband. He's watched Love Serving Autism grow from day one. My husband, by the way, is very supportive. He's a USPTA and PTR teaching pro in South Florida. He is a master pro. He's fantastic. He understands tennis, but he and I talk a lot about balance, and it is 24/7 organizing and running programs. And when you're the leader of a nonprofit organization or any business. But as we continue to grow and expand, I am learning to delegate better. We have a new board of directors now with 8 new board members who started in February 2023. And we are getting more support, which is fantastic. So I think for me, it is a balance of focusing on the nonprofit when it's time, and then learning to turn it off a little bit and enjoy my family and my wonderful dog, and and play some tennis. And I love the organization so much that to me it's not really work, but I do know that it's a balance. So it's something that I am still learning about and working on in my life.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so this episode is being released during Autism Acceptance Month. And one of the goals of this podcast is to interview people from the communities we're celebrating during these DE&I celebration months. What's your passion and purpose when it comes to just serving autism?
Another great question. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank USTA Eastern, David Williams and Neil, and just so many of you are just so incredible. And your section really advocates for diversity and inclusion in the industry. And I really hope that other sections follow. I'm also from UST Florida section, and they do a great job with embracing neurodiversity. I like that word because even though our motto is serving autism on and off the tennis court, we do have participants who are not autistic. Maybe they have a learning disability, or maybe they have a physical impairment. Maybe they're wheelchair athletes. So it is a mix of what you see on court. I think that it's super important. Autism Acceptance Month is every April, and this is a big month. I'm wearing blue. That's the color, and my nails. It is a color it's a theme of the month. And Autism Acceptance Month to me really is all about accepting children and adults and individuals and people in society who are different. Maybe they're wired differently, they learn differently. I think we need to, as coaches, teach the way that they learn. I think that autism has been great from my perspective as a teaching pro as well, because it teaches you how to differentiate your instruction. So it is true when they say you teach one child with autism, it's one child with autism. It's every child's different and unique. I hear a lot from coaches about how they're learning how to work with all the athletes on court, which is great. So it's a big topic, what you just mentioned. And I think Autism Acceptance Month is really about embracing and celebrating individuals who are unique and different. And it's not about labeling. It's not about, oh, we have to fix them. It's really about identifying their strengths and helping them reach their potential.
Absolutely. And so tell us why tennis is a great option for people with autism.
Tennis is a fantastic sport. Parents are often surprised. I had a mom call me today. Her son's 4 years old. And she said, we have a tennis court in our house, in our neighborhood here in South Florida. And my son has like an obsession. He walks by it and wants to learn how to play. So she said, I know he's a little young, but can he start Love Serving Autism? And I said, of course, because, it's early intervention. It's great to get them out there. The reasons for tennis is so great is it's repetitive. It helps with the motor coordination. It's visual sport. So there's a lot of engagement going on. It's a social activity. And, some of our participants do progress to a very high level where they're in tournaments. So they may start at the beginner level of red ball, and they're learning the basics, and they advance all the way through red, orange, green to yellow, and they're playing in inclusive, tournaments. And it's exciting to see that there is a pathway now, and there's a progression, and there are opportunities for them for a child or an adult, say they're on the spectrum, to advance through tennis. And I think coaches now are becoming more trained in it through USPTA and PTR. There are more opportunities for coaches to learn. So these participants are succeeding more in the sport than they were maybe previously. So there are more opportunities for them to learn to play.
And it's so interesting because I had the pleasure of meeting you and taking one of your workshops at the NTC last year for the Adaptive Championships, and seeing you pull out, the one coveted item I think you have is your poster, right? That has all your curriculum out there and how to teach everyone to work with, children with autism. How did you, go? What went into you developing that curriculum, and how did you decide like this is your secret sauce and it factor?
So I know you're referring to the banner with visuals, right? And being a speech therapist, teachers and speech therapists use a lot of visuals in schools because that's how a child learns fastest, is through visual cues versus auditory cues. So basically the banner has a visual schedule on it. So it's the order of activities. So myself and some speech therapists put it together, and we printed them. And then we, now you can hang them at the programs, the banners. So if a child comes to class for the first time, the coach can point to all the picture symbols and say, okay, this is the order of what we're doing in tennis today. And they start to memorize it. It also has a communication board on it to where if a child is minimally verbal or nonverbal, they can point to the different picture symbols of saying, I want a water break, or I'm all done. And they can answer yes, no questions. So again, it's all about engaging them for their expressive language so that they can learn to communicate better. So it's really a therapeutic tool. And Again, it hasn't been really used a whole lot in sports. I've noticed that it's somewhat innovative. Coaches are really interested in it, even for children who are neurotypical. We have requests to order the banner for the coaches as well, who don't even teach adaptive tennis, because they think visuals are important really for everyone learning the sport. So I think, we started our first banner, I believe, in 2020 was the first time that we printed it and brought it to some programs. And ever since then, it's been a great tool. And when the therapists come out, like an occupational or physical or speech therapist, they can use the banner to help engage the participants during class.
That's great. And so you mentioned the word neurodiverse, and that's not something you hear all the time. But I understand there's some new statistics out from the CDC. Can you share some of those highlights?
Yes, I was attending, now that it's Autism Acceptance Month, we have a lot of events in April. And on Saturday, I was attending an event hosted by the Broward County Sheriff's Department. And it was a family resource fair event for families who are raising children with autism. And I was reading, I just parked my car and I received a text message from another organization. And it said that the CDC in March 2023 reported the new statistics of autism is 1 in 36 children in the US ages 8 and older are diagnosed. And that was based on 2020 data. And they do say that there are impacts from the pandemic on the social skills of children who, may have shown signs of autism early on, but they didn't really have the exposure to play and communicate with peers during the pandemic. So now there are even more children on the spectrum due to the delays they experienced during COVID. And so again, that's somewhat one of the reasons why we've seen an increase in our programming and the requests for our program, because parents are super interested in these types of opportunities for their child.
And that's a large number, 1 in 36
Right.
children. Like that's really impactful. And so that information is something you can now go take back, really, continue to grow your curriculum. And it really helps feed, not only funding, but also additional services for the world of autism. And so I would ask you, firsthand, based on your firsthand experience of when tennis really impacts someone with autism, and how it really helps them have a better life.
Well, I'll give you a few stories. I'll share a few stories. One is, for instance, the US Open. And the on-court experience at the US Open has been such a wonderful opportunity for our families. And just knowing that, first of all, that children are invited or adults are invited with special needs to the US Open or the Miami Open. I'll tell you about that in a minute too, or the Delray Beach Open. I think the ATP and WTA tournaments are being much more inclusive and inviting families to participate in these events now. So some of the stories, for instance, one mom reported that her daughter enjoyed the US Open event in 2022 so much that now she's requesting tennis. She's 18 years old and she lives in New York City and she's on the spectrum. And her parents, how can we help you, Lisa, start a program? What can we do? Our daughter needs exercise. She needs recreation. She needs socialization. She's 18 years old. And just that one on-court experience at the US Open really impacted her life and her family's life. And so to other people, they may take it for granted, it's another day of playing tennis. But when you're a parent and you're raising a child with special needs, feeling included and invited to such a big event really can change their life. We also participated in the Miami Open a few days ago on Friday, March 31st. We partnered with the big charter school in Miami, and we had 26 children with autism come out onto the courts. And again, they played tennis for an hour at the Miami Open, and then they stayed after and had lunch and, hopped on their school bus and went back. And it was just fantastic experience for everyone.
Now I'm sure you have plans to grow Love Serving Autism. And based on the 1 in 36 statistics, that really shows the impact of how prevalent autism is in children overall. What do you think is how do you impact children in families? Like, what really pulls at your curriculum, your heartstrings, and on and off the court?
I think the communication, the socialization, teaching children how to speak. I think that is a top priority. Obviously, on the spectrum, there's a wide range of individuals who are verbal and non-speaking or nonverbal. But for the children who are nonverbal and they come to tennis and they're pointing for the first time, or they're using visuals, or they're bringing their communication device and expressing themselves, or they're speaking for the first time, or you have someone who maybe higher level of autism or higher functioning who, now they're learning to initiate communication and having conversational exchanges, or they're learning how to interact with peers for the first time. I hear a lot of parents excited about this, even more so than the motor coordination piece, because I know it's important, obviously, to teach balance and control and coordinating our bodies, but just the fact that their self-esteem and learning that they can interact with peers and engage with peers, and now they made new friends who accept them for them, and it's like a safe place where parents bring their children. They're not judged. They're unconditionally loved. Parents support each other. They become friends. They don't feel isolated in the community. And the children are now making new friends and requesting, I want to see my friend again on Saturday. And I think that the socialization and communication piece and expressive language, especially me being a speech therapist, I think that's super important. I know there is some depression and anxiety, especially for young adults on the spectrum, and they are not always able to communicate and verbalize how they're feeling. So again, coming to tennis class and giving them a safe place to communicate and to interact with peers who are like-minded and neurodivergent helps them understand that they're not alone, and that they can play the sport, and they're just as important as everyone else, regardless if they're diagnosed or not. So I think that this is probably one of the top areas of impact, I'd have to say, for the programming. And parents actually with Love Serving Autism select goals, and they often pick communication skills as one of the top goals. They want their child to make friends. They want to know that they're not alone. And as therapists, we focus on the clinical side. So it's not just a child going to tennis. It's how can we get them to communicate and follow instruction and express themselves on the court. So I'm sure parents can tell you a lot more stories than I have today of what goes on in the home after tennis. But parents also report that their children are more regulated. Sometimes they have a tough time regulating their emotions. But after tennis classes, they come home, they're calmer, they're more relaxed, they're happier. Again, I know you asked me about the benefits of adaptive tennis, and it's kinesthetic too. So when they hit the ball, I really think that it helps calm their central nervous system. And it's like a sport for all of us. It's very therapeutic. So I do believe that there are so many benefits to the sport. So I think the impact is great, and we're just beginning to see what this sport is capable, I guess, of teaching these participants. I know I was in Arizona at the USTA annual meeting, and they did highlight adaptive tennis. There is a blind and visually impaired programming now. There are programs for wounded warriors, obviously programs for intellectual and developmental disabilities. The USPTA is doing a great job embracing these programs and making an impact, making sure that they're becoming a priority now. And I have seen many more doors open, which is fantastic, with the USTA Foundation, with USTA Eastern, USTA Florida, a lot of these leading sections kind of paving the way so that if you are neurodivergent, you do have opportunities to play. And I think that's what our big goal should be in tennis. Everyone can play. It's really for everyone.
And now, if you're a parent out there listening, or a coach that's not familiar with the curriculum, what is a day in a life like for the player and the coach on and off the court?
Well, we do offer different, as far as Love Serving Autism, we do offer different types of programming. Some are during PE classes. So some children are now learning tennis during PE, which is awesome, I think. We do have some after school programming. So a child would go to school all day. Some of these are specialized charter schools for special needs or children with autism. They walk outside, their coach is waiting. We set up all the portable equipment and they're ready to play and meet, the therapists come out. Another model is on a weekend, say it's a Saturday, the public tennis center. Parents will drive their child to the courts, or the caregivers will drive their child, and they'll play for an hour and meet their friends. In a lot of situations, there's sometimes a little bit of challenges with transition, maybe from the car to the tennis court on day one. We do have a social story, which is on our website on Love Serving Autism, and it basically helps a child listen. It's like a little book, and it explains to the child what to expect on their first day of playing. Or even for adults, what is expected. First you meet your coach, then you meet your friends, and this is what my first day will look like. A challenge with autism, I'd have to say, is, they do typically, the children and adults don't like change. They like the same routine, the same patterns, the same coach, the same day, the same time. And I think tennis also teaches flexibility. If it rains one day, we're in South Florida, we can't control the weather. So they have to learn it. We're not playing tennis today. We're going to pick a new activity to learn to become a little more flexible with their routine and their schedule. But tennis does provide that weekly structure and that stability so that they know, well, it is on my schedule, and they look forward to attending it.
And how can people get involved and learn the Love Serving Autism mission?
Well, our website is www.loveservingautism.org, and we list all of our programs on program information. We also are planning our second annual Match Point Gala, which will be in Boca Raton, Florida in November, which is our annual fundraiser. And it's an exciting campaign. And we are nominating individuals and businesses. We're calling them legacy ambassadors. So they're helping us fundraise this year. So if you're a coach, or if you are a facility or a school and you're interested in Love Serving Autism, you're welcome to also reach out to me. I'm Lisa. So Lisa at loveservingautism.org. Some coaches sometimes reach out. They just want a little bit of guidance on inclusive programming, how to teach a child with autism in their after-school program. Some coaches are interested in training. We are working on a certification course for coaches currently. So we do hope to complete that by April. And so coaches can become more familiar with teaching adaptive tennis and what it looks like. USTA National also, I'm on the National Adaptive Committee, and we did write curriculum for Intro to Adaptive Tennis. So that is also available for Safe Play coaches, Safe Play certified coaches. So more curriculum is becoming available, and that's exciting. And I think that parents can obviously go to our website as well, or reach out to me if they're interested in learning more about our program.
Lisa, on behalf of USTA Eastern, I'd like to thank you for sharing your tennis story with us.
Thank you for inviting me. And again, it's an honor. I consider USTA Eastern a family. And I know I live in South Florida, but I'm always here to support your section. And I appreciate you inviting me for this opportunity.
We thank you. Tune in next time to hear our tennis story, where we're talking with Janet Leifowitz, founder of Hero Tennis. Thank you for tuning in.